Today, we are gonna, well, possibly talk about functions. Before we start, are there any questions on the previous material? Assignment 0, that kind of stuff, other than my repo doesn't work because I haven't done this or something like that. We can do those individually, but general question.
I did, but I don't know. I forgot to put your as an assignee.
Okay, if you ever forget to put me on the pull request or merge request is what GitLab calls them, you can edit that merge request and add me as assignee. If you don't do that, I never see it. It never happens. Assignment 0 is not graded on purpose, so that so that all these problems don't have any big problems, right? So assignment 0 is not graded, but yes, you have to put me as assignee.
From GitLab or?
From GitLab, right?
How helpful is assignment 0 to do assignment 1?
Coding-wise, absolutely unhelpful. I'm telling you to change a string, right, into another string. I'm telling you to type 3 characters. On the other hand, assignment 0 is absolutely indispensable to setting up your machine, setting up the JDK, setting up Git, and figuring out how to send pull requests, right? So that's why it's not graded. If you didn't do it, what's going to happen is you may be able to complete assignment 1, maybe, but chances are you will not be able to submit assignment 1 and you still get a 0. So it is absolutely necessary.
Yeah, so the main purpose was like to install JDK.
To force you to install the JDK, Eclipse, or IntelliJ, all of that stuff.
That was the purpose.
Yes. Yes. If you see, there is no programming, right? It just says, I'm giving you exactly the changes that you need to do. So there is no programming involved, but it forces you to set up all that stuff, right?
So how can we edit that?
If you go on GitLab, you should see a place for merge request, and you can select the one and edit it. Let me do, just for fun, since we are recording.
Is it assignee?
If you go here, right, you would go, I think I closed that merge. Let me go to, this guy. Okaram fake. That's my fake. That's my fake guy. I can create a new merge request from A0 to master, right? Submit it. And then after that, if you go to your repo, you would see a tab with merge request, right? Come here, click on this one, and it will open, right? Will show you all that stuff. Here you have edit, and you can come and edit the merge request, change all this stuff, including assignee.
I don't see my assignment there.
And give it to me. You don't see the merge request?
I see the merge request, but I don't see my assignment.
You don't see the contents? That may be because you never submitted the changes.
You are the assignee, right?
You have to put me as assignee. In this case, I wasn't. I will be putting myself as assignee.
How about milestone?
Doesn't matter. All the other stuff doesn't matter.
I found my assignment 0, but
Wait, what do you mean by you found your assignment 0?
in GitLab,
You found the branch, you found the file, or you found the pull request, the merge request?
I found what I did.
Yes. Did you find the file? Did you find the branch? Did you find the merge request? That's all what you did, right? You need to create a branch, right? You need to put your changes onto that branch, and you need to send me a merge request that compares that branch onto master. All three of them are what you did, right? In here, you could find all the branches, right? And they will contain what you did, right? But that's not, what you need to be doing is merge requests. Did you ever send a merge request?
I sent the merge request, but how do I know that my changes will be submitted?
Okay. You can look at the merge request. If you look at this, one of the things that it has is changes, and that shows the actual changes, right? And I will try to be very fast about giving you feedback and about being mean. This is not what I normally do, right? But I will do it for this class because it's quick feedback. There are two possible answers to a merge. Well, there's actually three answers to a merge request, right? One is a bunch of comments, right? This could be better or something like that, right? That's the obvious answer. But then there is two outcomes of your merge request. Either merged, life is good, we put it in, or closed, no, I don't like what you did, right? Normally, we leave things open, right? Like, if I send a merge request to my teammates at work, it's kind of rude to close the merge request. That's considered like you are so far off that we don't want to see this, right? But for this class, I will be rude to you because I want you to get the immediate email that says this was closed or something like that, as opposed to you have comments and you can ignore them, because I want you to go fix it or improve it, right? So I will make comments and then fairly quickly either close it or merge it. Sometimes the comments will be nitpicking. This is a class where I should be nitpicking your code, right? That's part of what you pay me for. So I will nitpick your code, but if it's just nitpicking and it works, I will still merge it. Kind of like, yeah, those are things that you could improve, but on the other hand, this works, so it's good enough, right? And I will put the grade on all the other ones, not an assignment 0, because assignment 0 is not great.
No, I found this I have to put for target branch master or assignment.
Target branch is always master. Target branch is always
And
master.
save changes.
Yes, and put me as assignee.
Yeah. And that's it.
Yes. That's how you submit. And then you get feedback, either yes, no, or also many times I'm grading, like right now, right? I have 12 merge requests, maybe 13 in a minute. So when I'm doing that, if it's all good, I'll just merge it and keep going, right? So if I don't have anything important to say, I'll just not say it. Still assign you grade, right? But not say it. Does that make sense? So I try, if I can, I'll try to give you a pat on the back, say good job or something like that, but sometimes when I get into grading mode, I will not be doing that. Does that make sense? And hopefully I will stay up late tonight grading this stuff so that we have at least one feedback cycle, right? Because that is important. Any other questions?
Do we need to all the time do like that?
Yes. That is how you submit. Submitting your assignment, right, for grading means creating a merge request and assigning it to me. That is the only way that you submit assignments. Sure. If you can, please make the branches the same as the assignment. So make sure that you create a branch called A0, A1, or A2 for the corresponding assignment, because all my scripts for automated grading assume that stuff, and so I have it so that there is 40 people total in the class or something like that, so that I can go through and grade fairly fast, but it assumes that the assignment name is the same as the branch name. And if that's not the case, I can still grade it, but it just sucks for me. So,
What does the graph represent?
what does the graph, which graph?
There is an option of graph, the top registry graph.
I have no clue. Oh, this just say commits. They are charts for the graphs, but like, does it have?
And it names, it has some names.
Yeah, it just says
Your name
who.
And the computer name?
No, this is the person name. This is my name.
But yeah, like we have two graphs. One is your graph and one is computer name.
No, that's not computer name. It's your name. No, or somebody.
My wife here.
Well, she committed stuff.
No.
What may happen is the git command tries to get username and email from the machine, and so sometimes it gets it. So if you did this on your wife's machine,
This is our machine. I always use.
you use her machine. So yes, git was fancy enough to discover that that was the machine name or the account name and actually submit it. So it knows that it's your wife. You are in trouble now.
It does appear that way, so I just pulled it up and it tells me exactly the commits I made that was successful and the commits you rejected.
Yeah. So it should be, I mean, this one doesn't have anything because this was my fake account just to, so, yeah, just make sure that you close that loop, right? And another thing, if you can, when you ask questions, give me the information so that I can help, right? Stuff like Eclipse doesn't work is not a very useful, right? My first reply to your thing, either on D2L or on email, is what exactly did you try to do, right? So when you send me a question, and some of you are doing this the right way, right? But like avoid that step, right? And directly tell me, what were you trying to do, right? What did you do? What did you expect to happen and what happened, right? So it's not Eclipse didn't work, but I imported my project on Eclipse. I do run as select. I do run as, and it runs, instead of running the test, it runs main and it prints something on the screen, right? Like, oh, you didn't use JUnit test as your configuration, right? Or something where I can try to give you try to actually solve your problem as opposed to commiserate with you. Yes, I'll give you a hug. Eclipse doesn't work, but still, right? That's not what you want. I have 2 kids, right? I need to know when my kids are asking for help whether they want a hug or where they want help, right? Sometimes what they want is a hug. Like, yeah, cool, yes. That is bad. So now go fix it. And sometimes that. I won't treat you like my kids. I'll try not to, at least. But anyway, we are gonna start building abstractions, and abstractions are very, very useful. That is what we do in computer science, not just in programming. That is what you will do forever, for the rest of your career, for the next 25 or 30 or 40 years. you're going to be building abstractions. And the idea is you build the abstractions well enough that the other stuff is easy, right? Functions are one way to build abstractions. They behave almost like a function in math. You put data in and you get data out, right? When we define a function in Java, we specify the return type, what kind of data do we get out. Java is a strongly typed language, so everything has a type attached to it. So this is the return type. This is the name of the function. We put parentheses, and the parentheses are necessary. Then the name of the input, the type of the input, and a name for that input parameter. Braces, and they determine all the body of your function. And then, since we haven't seen much yet of Java, all we are going to do for the most part is return, right? Return statement says, we are done with the function, right? Now give this value back, right? And so this function is called isEven, and what we are returning is whether the number divided by 2, so the number modulo 2 is 0, right? So let me actually, let's use Eclipse, because that's what most of you are using, right? So let's kill this guy and use Eclipse. IDEs are cool and powerful and pretty, but they tend to take forever to run. They're big programs that consume oodles of resources. I'm going to create a new Java project. I'm going to create a new class. Functions. And I should have created main, but that's okay. For now, assume that this is magic, public static. We will fairly soon say what it is, but that's why I didn't do this. We will talk more about it next class, but your Java programs start on a main function. For now, still treat it as magic, but and one of the things we can do is print. Which we do with system.out.println. This guy dead. Delete. System.out.println. Isn't that horrible? Sorry? We are trying to print. This is what we're trying to print.
Is even to, that is.
Yes. What would this print? Or what would is even of 3 evaluate to, and so what would we print?
Would be false.
Will be false, hopefully, right? Beautiful. Oh, there's no wrong configurations?
That's true.
Let me try this. Run as Java application. Woohoo!
Wow.
It printed false. Right? Why?
Because 3 is odd.
Odd.
3 is odd, but actually 3 got substituted here, right? And so it did 3 modulo 2 is 1. Is it equal to 0? No, that's false, so that's what got returned, and that's the value that got substituted here. Does that make sense? Is this cool or what?
So we have to divide 3 to 2.
It's modulo, right? So it's not division, it is the remainder. Reminder is to remind you something. Remainder. I always get confused with those two words. English is not my native language.
So we don't divide it, right?
We don't divide. If you were doing it on paper, you divide to find the rest, right? It's what doesn't fit when you divide, right? So if you divide 7 by 2, what's the answer? What's 7 divided by 2?
There is a remainder, so it's
It's 3 with a remainder of 1.
3 points.
It's not 3.5, you're in elementary school. You're back in elementary school. It's 3 with a remainder of 1, right? So the remainder is what that modulo does, right? And so that will return. In this case, we are doing 3 modulo 2, which is 1. What happens if we do is even of 24?
true.
When we run it, we'll hopefully see true. Yay! Isn't this cool? Now, what other things can we do with functions, right? Okay, just so you know, Java doesn't quite support functions. It requires you to define methods, which are always attached to a class. So that's why we still have to define a class and declare our methods as static. Public is not strictly necessary, but that's normally what you want to do. In the next month or so, we'll talk about what static really means and what public really means. For now, assume they are magical incantations that you add to your Java code. Actually, most of the time you won't add it to your Java code. I will add it to your Java code for you, so you just put the code inside. Of course, in our function, we could have more than one line. Right now, we cannot do much. We'll see all the other things that you can do. But one of the things we could do is define a variable, right? And so we could redefine our isEven function. So instead of directly doing this, we declare variable remainder by 2, right? Which is equal to the number modulo 2, and then we return whether that variable remainder by 2 equals 0.
You're missing a brace for the public cycle name one.
I'm not. Yeah. It was there. Just got hidden. Thank you. Yes, pair programming works. You will notice a bunch of tiny mistakes that I will be making. And that is good. I make them on purpose to verify where you're awake. Right? One important thing about this variable, right? This remainder by 2 variable, right? Which is the same as what we have doing with variables. This variable is local to the function. It's local to the execution of the function, right? It just appears while you're evaluating the function, and then when you're done, it disappears. It dies. Does that make sense? Because I can do this. What would this print? False, right? I call the function twice. Each one of those execution gets its own variable, right? So we never get confused, and eventually we get false. Does this idea make sense? Is in life good? We can define other stuff. Let's create really useful functions. Add. It creates a variable called sum, right? Well, first of all, what's the return value? Int, right? How many parameters does this function have? 2, number 1 and number 2, right? And both of those parameters are int. Name of the function is add. And so, and I need to do static. Probably public static. So instead of printing this stuff, I can print really complicated stuff. Add 3, 4. What would this print? 7, really complicated stuff. We can, of course, combine expressions, right? We could be doing 3 times 2 and 4, right? And that would print what? 10. What would this print?
42. 13.
6 plus 7, right? So that's 13. So you can nest your function calls, right? Functions can call, right? Well, these functions can call other functions, but also your expressions can combine function calls and other operations and things like that to any depth within reason. The compiler will get tired before you get tired. Does this idea make sense? That is the power of building abstractions, right? You can now use them almost as if you had defined your own operator. Actually, this is a standard basic operator. But we could also define functions that call other functions. By the way, notice how Eclipse is telling me that I'm doing dumb things. I'm saying that I'm returning a Boolean and I'm not. So Eclipse is marking that as red. Right? That kind of stuff can be helpful or annoying or both. How could we check whether the sum is even or not? The sum of two numbers.
Calling is even function.
Sorry?
Calling is even function. Return.
Call this even function. Good. So return is even of something. Is even of what?
The sum of those two. So be number 1 plus number 2.
Complicate your code. Over-engineer it.
Right.
It would be really cool if we had a function that could add two numbers.
Okay, I see. Okay. See what you did there.
Oh, and then we're not calling it, so we don't see it, right? That's another important thing, right? If you don't call your functions, you can define them, they're perfectly okay. They just don't do anything until you call them. You can call them several times and things like that, right? So is sum even 1, 1. Oops, 1, 2. 1. Ah! I forgot my magic. Static. So what would this print? True. Does this make sense?
Why do you write this even one like?
This is what gets passed to the function. So when you go to evaluate the function, you say, instead of number 1, assume that it's 1, as if it was a variable that had been initialized to 1, right? Then gets substituted in here.
So instead of add, we cannot write sum, right?
What do you mean?
We define it.
Add? You cannot write sum because you don't have a function called sum. If you define a function called sum, then you can.
There is no function sum.
No. Just like there is no function add, we just created it. Right?
Create.
You can create the function, yes.
So the static is for that.
Public and static is magic. Assume that it's black magic. It's just magical incantations that you have to write.
To create that add, we static is used.
The static is because the function is, the method, it's a method. Java doesn't really have functions. It's a method and it's attached to the class rather than to an object. So you don't need to create an instance. If you didn't understand half the words that I said, assume that it's black magic and put static. We will go over that stuff. It's just programming has this problem where you need a bunch of stuff is interrelated, and so it's really hard to
Understand and work.
yeah. So the best solution we have is to say, assume this is black magic, just copy it. We will demystify the black magic later on. So we're going to define a function sum. Let's make one that takes 3 rather than 2, right? How could we do it? Let's use our add function.
You can nest the two of the add functions together.
Yes, and 1.
1, 2, 3,
Is this cool or what? Now you have a sum function. Does this make sense? Just to annoy you, I tend to not use this too much, right? You notice we declare 2 functions with the exact same name and stuff. Java complains. However, we can define it as long as it has different types of parameters. In this case, we have 2 functions. They're both called sum, but one takes 2 parameters, the other one takes 3, right? So when you call it, Java can distinguish which one did you mean. And so it will let you do that. This is called overloading. And it's sometimes useful, many times confusing as hell, right?
If we keep the 3 parameters, same 3 parameters, then we keep the return type different.
The return type, no, because Java doesn't know when you are calling it, right? Java doesn't know which return type you wanted. You could have different types of parameters, but not the return type. Has to be the name, not the names, it doesn't care about the names. It cares about the types and number of parameters. Does that make sense? Isn't this cool? Let me go back to my notes to verify that I'm covering everything. But, so we can do that. We can combine functions, right? One function can call other functions. Now, actually, let me avoid this and go talking about this, which is horrible. But functions should return a value, right? That's the idea of a function. Sometimes your program is supposed to affect the world. In fact, your program is supposed to affect the world, right? If your program didn't affect the world, then you wouldn't run it, right? What do we mean by affecting the world? You calculated values, right? That didn't affect anything. You need to print them, save them to a file, do something to that, send them over the network to somebody, right? You need to do stuff that changes the world, right? So sometimes you could have methods that change the world instead of producing a value. Does that idea make sense? Well, what's my return type? My return type, oops, and I didn't put it there, is void. So I could define, that's what happens when I write notes without testing my code. We use void as our return type, right? That means I'm not returning anything. So this function, I would normally not call it a function because it doesn't go with the mathematical definition of a function. It doesn't return anything, right? It just goes and changes the world. So I would call this method, and it will do stuff. So I can call print 3 times and pass it as string. Programming is fun. Gun. No, it's not gun. It is fun though. Is this cool or what? What? Okay. But we can have functions or methods that don't return a value, right? I tend to call them methods, not functions. Now, with that mentioned, oops, I had it here. Let's talk a little bit about purity and this idea of a mathematical function, right? If I call a mathematical function, this idea of a function is something that you send data in, it sends you data out, right? Should it change the world? No, right? It should just send me data out. Should it change the data that got in? No, it should just send me data out, right? When we have functions that are pure, that adhere to that mathematical standard, right? It's easy to reason with them. I don't need to figure out when did you call this function. If my function changes the world, or if my function changes the data, then I need to worry about what value was here when, as opposed to just what value. Does that make sense? So that makes my life much harder to reason about. So functions can affect the world outside the function by either returning a value, and if I return a value, then the caller may do whatever with that value, may even ignore it and do nothing with it. Or it may print it, or right? But that's the caller, not me, right? If I this function, I just compute that value and return it. Did the value got printed? I don't know. Whoever called me may know whether it got printed, right? I don't. it can also change its parameters when they're objects, and we'll talk about that, or change the global state directly, right? The screen or those things. And so ideally, your functions would be pure. They would only return a value. That means you can easily see what's happening. Eventually, your program needs to change the world, because that's why you're running it, right? Ideally, only main should change the world, right? And so that makes your life much easier. That's what we tend to do. For at least the next 2 or 3 assignments, right, all you're doing is getting input values and doing stuff to them. You're never directly changing the world. Maybe you are. Depends on how you think about it. But let's do actually some more examples now that we talked about void functions. Boolean functions. Let's do this one. Is in between. By the way, I defined something like this, I think exactly this, in your assignment 1 with a typo. I do number greater than or equal to high and number less than or equal to low. So if you want to use it in your assignment, either change it, which is better, or pass the parameters weirdly. I suck sometimes. So this function would return whether the number is in between these 2 things, right? So it checks whether the number is greater than or equal to low and less than or equal to high. Oh, we probably ought to also do low and high, right? And we could call it. What would this return? False, right? Here, for assignment 1, you basically need to define a bunch of functions, relatively simple. People who don't have any programming experience have an advantage in assignment 1. Isn't that cool? People who have seen if statements tend to do every Boolean thing with an if. For the functions in assignment 1, you do not need if statements. We haven't seen if statements. It makes your life much easier if you don't use if statements. If you haven't seen if statements, you're good. You got it.
Excuse me.
Yes.
The public static void is usually for call the other function.
The void functions, right, are for usually call other functions.
And it always comes after the other function.
No, wait. The main function, this is the magical thing. There is one function, only one function, called main, which has this particular signature. All of this is black magic for now. It's public static void main with lowercase m, and then it has string, whatever variable name you want, and then weird square brackets. That function is the main function of your program. That function will get executed when you run it. The whole thing is magical.
That's my question. The whole thing always comes after
It doesn't have to. You can put it at the very beginning or in the middle. Java doesn't require. I tend to put it at the bottom. Officially, it is a bad practice, but I do it all the time. To me, it doesn't make sense too, right? If you plan it for reading, it would probably make sense to put it at the top because that is kind of your. If you think about you're writing a document, that is your table of contents, right? And so it probably makes sense that it goes at the very beginning so you can see the table of contents. If your functions have good names, then it would be easy to understand what it does, and then you can look at the detail later. But when I'm writing the code, main makes perfect sense at the bottom because I go write the other stuff and then I call it. Yeah, officially you should write it the other way around. I don't. We are doing magic with JUnit, which runs unit tests. So when you run it as a JUnit thing, it will not execute your main. It will execute my tests, which is the same as if you run /gradelw grade or test. If you run /gradelw run, then it runs. Same as if you're running it like this, running it as a Java application. Does that make sense? Cool. I am gonna actually skip these things, right? You can do functions with booleans, right? We can do functions with doubles. Now let me just to introduce other stuff, do functions with strings. Because we will be using strings and they are slightly weird. They are weird compared to everything else we have done. Functions on strings either take strings or return strings, right? Strings are slightly weird. They are an object. They are a class. They are not a primitive. But they are immutable, so they behave almost like a primitive. When we have objects, you can use the dot to call functions or methods on that object, right? We have length, which returns the length of a string. We have substring, which returns a piece of the string. And it starts at 0. We start counting at 0, right? We have 2 lowercase and 2 uppercase, which returns the string with all upper or all lowercase. We have char at, which returns 1 character at a given place. And again, we start at 0. And dot equals tests whether a string is equal to another, right? So if you remember when we played with Java REPL, you can do stuff like abc.length. What would this return? 3, right? You can do abc dot substring 0, 1. That's a string containing the letter A. You could do char at 0, and that is 1 letter, the letter A. Are these two things different? abc.substring 01 and abc.char at 0. They the same or different?
Different.
They're different, right? One is a letter, the other one is a bunch of letters that happens to contain only one, but it's still the bunch. Does that make sense?
What is that 0, 1, like, I didn't get that.
1 is the first character to include, and the other one is 1 past the last character to include, which is horrible. So 0 to 1 includes only the character number 0.
Okay. So 0 is always nothing.
Wait. 0 means the first character of the string. So 1 means, right, if you have ABC, A is character number 0,
Yeah.
B is character number 1, C is character number 2.
Then 0 to 1.
Means 0 up to 1, but don't include the 1.
What does it mean?
So it's just 0. So if we do 0 to 3 would be the whole string. 0 to 3 without including 3. So you include 0, 1, and 2. Why did they do this? Don't ask me. Somebody thought that it was a good idea. Does this idea make sense? Cool. So we can define functions. Let's define and I tend to call all my strings S, because that's easy. So how do we return the first character of a string? Yes, so S, so return, sorry. Die. Does this make sense? And we would call it with first. This would print B. Life is good, right? How about we do whether the string starts with the letter A. What do we do? And let's assume that it's
You do a boolean.
lowercase. What if? There is no
No,
if.
no, you can do a
If don't exist.
You can do a boolean.
Yeah. Return what? Or
You have to do the char at the first position, so it'd be s dot.
it would be nice if I
or
had a
maybe
nice
first
function
char, yes. We already have that written out. And see if it's equivalent to whatever you're looking for.
to the letter A, right? Does this make sense? And
You have lecture R.
yeah, I have low case. I was actually trying to make promotion to a company that competes with a local company. Home Depot is in Atlanta. I was promoting the other guys. So it would return false because it doesn't, and if I do A, then it would return true, right? Is this cool or what? What other cool things can we do with strings? How can I know if a string is all lowercase letters? I have two lowercase, which would return me the same string, but all the letters transform to lowercase, right? How can I use that? if the string was all lowercase letters, what happens when I transform it to all lowercase letters? What do I get?
You get true. So you can compare it to like the entry down.
Yes, I get the same thing, right? Does that make sense? So what do I need to do? Compare the original string with the string that's all lowercase. If they are the same, then the string was all lowercase. Does that make sense? Yes, no? I'm seeing faces that say no, but are not brave enough to say no.
No,
It makes sense or no?
it does make, but I'm not getting it.
You have a string. Imagine that the string is ABC. Is it all lowercase letters? No, right? Well, you have a string ABC. Is it all lowercase letters? Yes. Okay. One way that I can do, I can pass it through a filter that makes it all lowercase. So when I get capital ABC and pass it, I get this, right? When I get lowercase ABC and pass it, I get this, right? So one way to check if the string was all lowercase is comparing those two values. If they're equal, then the string was all lowercase to begin with. Does that make sense? So
If you pass it to,
f dot to lowercase doesn't change s. S is still whatever it was. It returns a new string with all letters lowercase. Is that me? No, not yet. Not yet. We have 10 huge minutes.
So you can put that in the Boolean statement, right?
F dot to lowercase dot equals s. So I can do return this. I could store it in a Boolean variable, then return the Boolean variable. Turn a Boolean statement.
Or Boolean statement, yeah. Just say ask
Boolean expression.
as if it's equivalent to the two lower of it.
Yes.
That way, but-
Which is, yeah.
So, yeah, it's the same thing.
It's the same thing, but the other way around. It makes sense, right? S dot equals this rather than this. Probably makes more sense, right? Does this make sense? And you could use equal equal, except that no, you can't, because
Because it's string.
they are strings, not primitives. So don't use equal equal. Does this idea make sense? So I could ask, what would this print?
Be true, false, false, true. Right? So,
Sounds about right.
yeah.
Does this idea make sense? Is this cool or what? We will see a lot more, but for now, right, this should start you building abstractions, right? What other kinds of things do we want to build? Right now we have only seen, Oh, this one was interesting. How do we get the last character of a string? Let's return the character. What is the last character of a string? I need to use char at. What do I get here?
That's not length minus
S dot length minus 1, right? S dot length is 1 more because I start at 0, so minus 1. meaning return statements. Of course. Yay. I will not pollute your brain with if statements. Actually, maybe. But let me mention one more thing. And maybe I will pollute your brain with if statements. How to attack assignment 1, right? Chances are half of you have already done programming. You will do it in 5 seconds, right? And you'll just be sending pull requests. That's perfectly okay. The other half, right? I see a lot of times people who try to sit and just do all of that, right? All at once. It's never going to work, right? Because you end up with 10 syntax errors, right? And now you're doomed. You have 10 syntax errors. You cannot even test your stuff, right? How do you do it? Do one function, run your test cases, verify that it actually passed. If you have a syntax error, where is the problem? That line that you just wrote, right? I mean, there's only one thing that could have gone wrong, right? And so that is gonna help you get along the way. Yes.
So do we have to open a new project, copy the first one?
No, I'm giving you A1. I'm giving you a new folder called A1, right?
Yeah, in A1, like we have 7 tests, right?
Yes. No, you modify just assignment1 file, assignment1.java, but you can rerun the test.
It doesn't show, it says that all 7 are not correct.
If it shows that all 7 are not correct, why do you think that could be? Because all 7 are not correct. You haven't actually fixed any one. You made the code, but the test still goes bad. The code is not right. Right? Fix one, then it will start passing.
It says return false, it should be false.
What do you mean?
I see the one to do the one, and you say return false. When I run it, it should be false.
If it's true,
I have no clue what you're saying. I give you a freebie. No. To do, you need to implement this, and it tells you above. It tells you what it should do, right?
Oh, yeah.
So that's what you need to do. You need to change it so that it does that, right? So if you look at the GitLab, and this is not a bad idea because all of them are like this, right? You will have an assignment1 folder, right? Source, main Java assignment, assignment1, right? All that will change is the numbers. Normally, I give you this stuff, right? Here's what I'm doing. This function returns true if this parameter is odd, false otherwise, right? But that's not what it's doing. It's always returning false. So you need to implement this. You need to make it correspond to that comment. Right? Once you make it correspond to that comment, then it should be easy because it's the same as is even, right? Or not the same. Almost the same as is even, right? So you come, you fix it, right? You do /gradlew grade, or you do it with Eclipse, whatever makes you happy, right? And that should make one test pass. Right? Before, all 7 or 10 or however many tests were wrong. Now, there's one less, right? So running this with Eclipse, before everything was red, now something is green. Does that make sense? What happens if you messed it up and put a weird symbol or forgot the semicolon, right? Or something like that. You'll get a syntax error. Right then and there, you know that's the line that's wrong, right? I tend to make all of my assignments like this because that makes it easy for me when I'm writing this stuff. To verify, if not, my code always gets different than the documentation. So, does this make sense? So all you need to do, right, is come and look at all the to-dos and go do them. I normally say either example, and I'm giving you an example, or to do, you need to implement this, and so you need to go implement that.
So we need to fix all of them.
Yes.
So all the instructions are inside here, right?
Yes. All the instructions are in there.
You don't have to go back to assignment 1, the in D12.
Not really. I mean, if you go in D2L and you hit assignment 1, you would hit I'm telling you that I had a typo,
Yeah, do we
how
have
to
to
fix
follow
it.
this all?
Well, you have to follow it to submit, right?
No,
And
I'm
to-
talking about a little bit higher. Could you scroll it up?
This
Oh,
is the
this
same
one.
thing. This is the same thing.
Same thing, yeah.
But always the source code is authoritative. In fact, after assignment 1, I don't ever write this stuff because it's like, okay, I would get too confused when I change it only in one place. So, but this may have hints or other stuff that may not be in the comments. Does that make sense? So go do it step by step. If you try to do everything at once, right? Especially if you try to do everything at once without a compiler, it is not going to work and you're going to have a hard time. And it's going to feel terrible. The compiler is going to be yelling at you for 10 different things, right? If you do them one at a time, you get, one of the really cool things about computers is that we get immediate feedback. You get the reward. The test is green. Woohoo! What do you do if you get stuck?
Email.
Yes! Actually, even better than emailing me is what?
Texting.
Texting.
No. Send a merge request. Because imagine that. I get the exact source code that you're fighting about, right? And I can run the code that you have. Because I can download the exact source code that you have and run it. Does that make sense? The merge request is not just I'm done. It can be help. It's probably a very good idea to follow that with an email or a text, right? Saying, please help, just send you a merge request. I'm stuck in this, right? Depending on how stuck you are, you may want to still continue and do the rest, right? But send the merge request. You can ask questions. That's why we are doing it this way.
So if you send a merge request, like before time, then you're gonna check it and you're gonna post your comments on that.
Yes,
So that
and then close it.
Oh, so
Close it means it's not right yet,
okay,
right? You still have time
yeah, we still have time. We can submit it for the second time.
for the 37th time. Yes, that is the
You will
point.
get it right before time. Before.
To tell you the truth, within reason, I don't terribly mind about time, right? Time is necessary because, first of all, we have a deadline, right? You need to learn all this stuff by May 5th or whenever it's the last day of classes, right? So that's one thing. The second thing is kind of keeps us together, and I'm not infinite and there's 50 of you for one of me, right? You can beat me up fairly easily. So the timing is for that, right? For allowing me to be able to grade 50 assignments and things like that. If you are submitting stuff, right, it's not a big deal. However, I will get really mad at you and treat you badly and give zeros and stuff on assignments, right? If your first thing is on Sunday night, right? If you send me your first merge request on Sunday night, you're not getting any help, right? Why? Because when should your first merge request be? Tonight, right? Actually, on Monday, but that's okay. Yeah, right? So that way, you have all the time to fix these things. Cool. I will see you guys eventually.